Shore time means finishing on Friday is as good as finishing on Tuesday.
What short time means to me is when the task is done, I'm done, and I'm done.
Short time means I can build you a house out of 550 cord and duct tape. You wouldn't want to live there, but I can build it. Today's short time, boat stereo upgrade. Enter Motion Granted, our brand new custom ordered 2021 Bayliner VR6. And when I say custom, I don't just mean the color. Everything from bow to stern is exactly what I wanted. However, that free stereo that came with her is worth exactly what we paid. So I reached out to my fellow short time partner in crime, Curtis. He designed the stereo and will put it in today on Maryland's Eastern Shore, Graysonville, Maryland. No, I'm not the least bit nervous. While Curtis is setting his plan into motion, what I'm really doing is
Doing what I do best, watching the experts work.
if you hadn't guessed by now, even though it's a brand new boat, there aren't any wiring harnesses. What that means is not only a lot of cutting and crimping, but it means we have to figure out where every wire goes one by one.
Okay, so if you use that spectrum backwards, you've got white, that's the driver's seat. And then we've got gray, that's the passenger seat, so we're going clockwise. Then in the right rear, we've got violet. And then finally, for the left rear, we have green. And it's just kind of the spectrum backwards if you were to put it in the spectrum order.
So in other words, the difficulty in figuring out the wiring on a boat versus, let's say, a car is when you use the spectrum to wire in order, you have to sort of skip a step on the boat. So bear in mind, when wiring a boat, not to go fully with the spectrum.
That's correct.
So we're not heat shrinking this radio. Isn't that ABYC boat standard?
No. So AC circuits must always be heat shrunk and they have to be double isolated. So typically a heat shrink butt connector and heat shrink over it. DC circuits below the waterline have to have heat shrink butt connectors. DC circuits above the waterline can just be a standard butt connector.
What's going on here and why sometimes you need an expert, or why sometimes some boats are criticized, are, as you can see, the wires don't actually match by color. You sort of have to figure that out. The easiest way is to cheat. And by cheating, what you do is when you cut the old connections, and you have to on this boat because it was wired hard instead of a harness, you sort of cheat by cutting the old wires and leaving it connected so you can identify the color of the harness that it's going to go into. I like to put the right gauge on the right wire. I can see, from 10 down to 18 exactly what it does and makes it perfect. Sometimes when you use a dike, if you put a little too much pressure, you're cutting wires rather than stripping them. Unlike with a bolt, you can't over tighten, or in this case, over crimp a wire. There's really no such thing. You make sure you crimp them very diligently, because the last thing you want to have to deal with is, after you've put this rat's nest back together, is that incomplete short you've just made because you got weak on crimping. So always pull and tug to make sure it's connected. Always crimp the hell out of it while you're putting it down. But that wasn't the only surprise.
So the head unit size, even though it's round, is not as universal as they say it is. We're removing an old round head unit from the factory dash. We're putting in a round marine head unit to it. However, this is about 3/8 of an inch bigger, so we're having to modify the dash.
We haven't made quite as much progress as we would have liked today. We're going to be working on the dark in a little bit, and we're not going to film. We'll catch you up next time, apprise you of the progress we made with maybe some stills or some boring explanation, but we'll figure it out.
Such is life.
Such is life.
Day 2 of what should have been a 3-hour tour. Ba-dum-bum.
So yesterday when we left off, we had not completed what we wanted to, and I had promised you a very boring explanation as to why, so here it is. The boating industry in many ways is like the wild, wild west. ISO standards are not the same for boats as they are for other industries, which means you have varied colors in wiring harnesses and sizes, etc. And as you can see from the 2 radio heads, those are supposedly standard size. You can clearly see the new one is shorter and wider, yet it has to go into the same helm plate. So what set us back considerably yesterday is I actually had to, well, I didn't. The really good mechanic among the 2 of us had to cut a much bigger hole in the helm plate to get it to fit, which took quite a bit of time, which set us back, etc.
It's important to manage your wires as you go. Those zip ties and Velcro that annoy our wives, well, they're not just to annoy our wives. No, really. Oh, look, even more fun. Many components of the amp are wired upside down. On purpose. And this is why I reached out to Curtis. To tune that amp like no one else can. So as this first stage of the stereo upgrade comes to a close, so does this first episode. Like and subscribe, please.
Shore time means finishing on Friday is as good as finishing on Tuesday.
What short time means to me is when the task is done, I'm done, and I'm done.
Shore time means I can build you a house out of 550 cord and duct tape. You wouldn't want to live there, but I can build it.
And since the first time was such an unmitigated disaster, here we go again. Short Time, Episode 2.
And on this second part of the boat stereo upgrade, we're going to do the speakers today with new JL audio speakers replacing that not so good Jensen system we had previously.
One of the reasons why I enjoy working with Curtis is we work similarly. That is, we prepare everything before we get started. Tools, materials, etc. The first part of the stereo upgrade is as easy as it looks. Simply a matter of unscrewing the screws and taking off the butt connectors. Easy peasy, right? This time, I did get one pleasant surprise.
So Curtis, I would be inclined to fill those screw holes with 4200 adhesive from 3M before I screw them back in, but you're saying not to. Why is that?
No, I wouldn't. These speakers are actually designed to seal to a flat surface, especially a smooth gel-coated surface like this. It has a double-walled rubber, not even foam, rubber gasket on the back of it, meant to seal. You don't want to do 4200. It just becomes a mess as you change speakers over the years or whatever. This is really designed smart.
These are just butt connectors.
Of course, installing speakers is a lot harder than taking them out. But do you remember last time when we told you that ISO standards are not the same for boats? That applies to speakers too. The screw holes simply don't line up, which means we have to drill into the deck and take some extra measures to make sure we don't get cracks or otherwise scar up the gel coat.
So what we were doing there is just beveling the opening to the holes where the new screws are going to go. The reason for that is if you leave a if you drill the hole and you leave a sharp edge at the top of the hole, and you run in a self-tapping screw, as the threads grab the very edge of that, they're going to want to pull, and it will actually cause the gel coat to crack. Sometimes, even if not now, you'll find spider cracks later. So by beveling the top of the larger drill bit there just into the gel coat, your screw will go in and it won't pull the surface of that gel coat and cause cracks. She looks good, Maddie.
Yeah, she does. I think we're done. At least with the back speakers. Now for the fun part.
And one of the things we want to do before we start laying out our template and all of that is notice these wires and make sure that they're out of our way. But also feel back here and see what else we have. On both of these, you can see if I pull down, we have an entire wire harness here, two different harnesses that are secured here and here. So they run right above this speaker. We want to make sure that as we mark, we're taking that into consideration, and as we cut, that we're cognizant of where our blade is on the back side of this, so we're not cutting these harnesses up.
And so for bad mechanics like me, what that means is watch out for the wires.
Yes.
And of course, what absolutely thrills a brand new boat owner? That would be cutting big giant holes in the side of his boat. Actually, it's not that bad. It's just a matter of taking your time and having the right tools, such as a blade for your jigsaw specifically designed to cut fiberglass. That said, you still have to clean up, especially those hazardous fiberglass fibers.
In installing speakers onto a boat, part of the issue is the surfaces are not always flat. It's not like putting a tweeter into a cabinet all the time. The surface of a boat is often beveled or bellied. So when you put a speaker in a cabinet or something, it goes straight. The speaker fits right on top, it's not an issue. On this particular boat, where we want to put the speaker is bellied a little bit. So what you have is this kind of surface. And when you put the speaker in, now all of a sudden it's uneven. What we're going to do is take this insulation, this foam insulation here, weather stripping, and put it on one side of the speaker such that when we screw it down, it winds up flat.
The beauty of using foam weather stripping is that it compresses, meaning if you were to use a shim or a spacer, you would have to try to cut it at the right angle such that it makes it straight. In case you are wondering why we had to go through all this, take a look. I get that we're on shore time, and this is indeed the Eastern Shore, but perhaps the most important part of any installation job is the fit and finish. It simply needs to look professional. And if not, rest assured the wife will not be happy, which means storing all those zip ties and Velcro is going to be that much harder. And as Curtis completes the final step of the installation, tuning that amp like only he can, our second episode comes to a close. Like, subscribe, and get notified, please.